Hello everyone. Today we have a video about the most important topic in Buddhism. And I know that I say such things a lot, but it is true because many of my videos are on the same topic, but using different words. Some teachers call this topic wise attention, others call it right attention, and yet others came up with even less meaningful translations for essentially the very same thing. The real meaning of this word is what ultimately sets you free. The Buddha even said that he did not even see a single other thing that leads to the increase of wholesome qualities as this. In fact, basically every single video of mine is in one way or another about different ways to approach this topic. But now we try to make it very explicit. But, as usually before we begin, it might be useful to mention that the Buddha mentioned two ingredients that are necessary for the right view or stream entry to arise. The first one is, utterance of another. You have to get the necessary instructions or information from another person. And the second one is yoniso manasikara, or the wise attention or the womb attention that we talk about today. That said, one could argue that the utterance of another is only really necessary because it allows you to look into the right direction, into the right places. The idea is so foreign, the womb attention, and so much against the grain of the world that we would simply not do it without instructions. So essentially, one could argue that there only is one ingredient that you have to be pushed towards by the words of another person. But what is this even? What does this word really mean? Well, the literal meaning of the word yoniso manasikara is indeed womb attention, and that is quite different from the translations of wise attentions or something like that. It literally means attention directed at the womb of your entire experience, at what your experience is born from. Experience or your attention directed towards the source, so to speak. Literally every single method, technique, or contemplation, or even instructions the Buddha gave for the ending of suffering uses this at its very core. No matter if he spoke about sankharas or dependent origination, or even, simple seeming things like metta or virtue or jhana or many other things, all of them are built upon the very same thing, namely womb attention. The Buddha even went as far as saying that dependent origination is the only thing that is special to the Buddhas, that is special to his teachings. But why is it so important? Well, it is because we are always affected by craving and thus self, and cannot see anything beyond that. Whatever we experience already has the self and the suffering and all the other things. Experience arises with the self, and now we have to make it different. To escape that, we have to, by conventional means, we have no real choice. Our thinking and pondering alone is already affected by craving, so we need something that goes deeper than just thinking and pondering. We always see with craving, think with craving, and wrong understanding, and we need a tool to go beyond that, and it has to be applied on a more fundamental level than just thinking. We have to overcome clinging with clinging, but need external help from the Buddha or one of his disciples to look into the right places that are indeed at the, right level. But the right level is obviously a cheap trick to escape the difficulty to explain the entire topic. So when I say the right level, I mean you have to basically follow the entire gradual training. Anyway, more on that in a moment. So now that we know all of this, what is this womb attention and how do we practice this rightly? Well, our experience has, to be honest, many wombs or things that it could not exist without. We simply need to take one of those that resonates well with us and ponder on it sufficiently on the basis of very strong virtue. But let us have a quite mundane example to convey the meaning a little bit better. Well, you could think of the entire experience of yours as a monitor of a computer that displays a certain content. Normally, we are absorbed in whatever is going on the monitor, our immediate sense experiences, and we ignore everything else. Even worse, we cannot even see that there is a monitor at all on which all this plays out. Developing yoniso manasikara means that we train our mind in a way that allowed it to know that there must be a womb or a monitor that gives birth to the entirety of our experience. Next to the monitor, there could also be the womb of light that you need to see, or electricity to run the devices, etc. So you can go a bit further, but there's no real benefit in that. You just need one womb that you can direct your attention to. You want to see that the entirety of your experience depends on something that is outside of your control. That is more or less a single ingredient. On the most fundamental level, the Buddha always said, with this, that is. With the womb, there is actuality. Without the womb, or with the womb not owned, actuality cannot be owned. Thus, our wrong views fade away. Anyway, the important bit is that this womb must be all-encompassing, and nothing can be left out. If the womb you choose only covers parts of your experience, then the self will immediately re-establish somewhere else, and so will your suffering. It might be less suffering than before, but there is still suffering, and fundamentally you have not escaped. As an example, people surely can get some distance towards their senses and experience in a more detached manner. Yet the self typically immediately re-establishes on a level of consciousness or mindfulness, and now things happen to that consciousness or for it. And that part is left out and not seen, and thus the meditator is still shackled to samsara. So this is even true for the great and broad context of the immaterial jhanas and kasinas, the four great elements, etc. To really overcome this problem, you have to see that your entire experience is born from something else that isn't within your control. The entire experience is the sum of the 5 aggregates, as an example. Whatever you can experience, even including thoughts about past, future, present, and always pretty much everything related to time. All of that is always contained within the experience right now, which consists of form, feeling, perception, intention, and consciousness. Those 5 aggregates must be seen as dependent on that womb that gives birth to them. If there is even the tiniest blind spot, you have not yet seen the Dhamma according to the sutras. The stream enterer has understood that everything whose nature, the womb, has a property of anicca or arising, also has a property of cessation. There are no blind spots. It is like a clean cloth, as the Buddha said, that takes up dye evenly. Anyway, what thing you choose is secondary, and the Buddha offered countless possibilities. As there are a great many things that serve as a womb, or source, or origin from your experience. And the entire chain of dependent origination offers about 12 different links you could possibly attack at any given point. What you remove is more or less the ignorance in regard to 2 of those things. And in some discourses, in the Sutta Nipata, the Buddha listed even more possible pairs that included nutriments and many other things. To name a few examples, there are the bodies, the senses, feelings, intentions, moods, consciousness, the kasinas, the 4 great elements, and many, many more. Removing the ignorance from one of those links of dependent origination is enough for you to break free from the entirety of samsara. There are still some tames remaining that you have to overcome, and your training actually even starts at that point. But you are pretty much free to a very great degree. This is how the path starts, and not how the path ends. Before that you train, but you train not on the path. You train only on the path, on the Noble Eightfold Path, once you become a person of right view, a stream enterer. And with this womb attention, we essentially understand dependent origination. We understand the 4 noble truths. The most fundamental phrasing and principle the Buddha taught always starts with this, that is. The this in that statement stands for the womb of experience, and the that is the immediate sense experience. In directing our attention toward the womb, we can see our entire experience is undermined by something else that contradicts our sense of self. And as a result, the self crumbles away, and with it, 99.99999% of all sufferings that we could experience. We stop doing our suffering as soon as we notice that we are doing it, or more precisely, that we are fueling it through our actions. And whatever is left, the Buddha explained by the means of simile. He said, monks, suppose that a man would place 7 little balls of clay the size of jujube kernels on the great earth. What do you think, monks? Which is more? Those 7 little balls of clay, the size of the jujube kernels that have been placed here on the great earth, or the great earth? Venerable sir, the great earth is more. The 7 tiny little balls of clay the size of jujube kernels are trifling, as they do not amount to 100th part, 1,000th part, 100,000th part of the great earth. The Buddha responded, so too, monks, for a noble disciple, it is of such great benefit to be obtained the vision of the Dhamma. This is from Samyutta Nikaya number 13.5, if I remember correctly. Anyway, so in summary, do not try to understand the entire chain of dependent origination. That would be more or less an intellectual exercise, and it would remain on that level only. Try to understand a single pair of womb and actuality, and what is the womb, what the womb, for example, gives birth to. You must really understand how both are interrelated, and how one causes the other in your experience right now. This is why you need mindfulness, the reflection, the memory of the present moment. Based on that, you must also see how the womb is doing its thing on its own, without any of your control. In other words, you must see the womb as anicca, as dukkha, and as a result as anatta. And this must be all-encompassing. Not a single part of your experience can be left out. Thus, we usually use the 5 aggregates model or the 6 sense model, as nothing is exempt from those, and most people can see that quite quickly. Anyway, you cannot do that just like that. To wisely see, to see with Dhamma, so to speak, you must fulfill a few preconditions that are beyond the scope of this video, sadly. But if you're interested, you have a look at one of my videos on mundane right view, or at the True Dhamma lecture, or simply have a read of my book that I have linked in the channel banner that you can download at any moment. That said, one very important precondition is indeed virtue, and that one I will mention here in brief. Virtue essentially means that you learn not to act out based on how you feel and crave. You try to understand the motivations and inclinations behind your actions. In a sense, these motivations are the womb for your action. Instead of following those impulses, you just endure them without trying to change anything about them. First, you endure lust and aversion, which can take even some months if you are deep down the sensuality rabbit hole, or even years even. And then the real endurance on the mental level, on the right level, begins. The Buddha mentioned three types of feelings and 3 types of attitudes that we have in regard to them. Lust and aversion cover only 2 of them, so there are many blind spots left that obscure our vision. The last one is a neutral feeling, which is there when there is neither a good nor a bad feeling. And normally we experience it as extreme unpleasant and as boredom or even existential dread. And that is what we must endure rightly, as our default attitude towards it is one of ignorance and distraction from it. We distract ourselves from the Dhamma, from the Four Noble Truths, from seeing clearly. Essentially, we are distracting ourselves from the Four Noble Truths, and that must stop if we want to understand the Four Noble Truths. Because only when we understand that feeling, that neutral feeling too, have we seen the entire feeling womb, so to speak, of our experience. And in the end, what we understand is feeling, because experience converges upon the point of feeling. What matters to us is feeling. We always try to get away from bad feelings and go for more good feelings. And one more remark. All of this is nothing theoretical or something that happens in your intellectual mind alone. It has to happen based on your current experience and your current cravings. Otherwise, you do it wrongly. It has to be rooted in how you feel and crave right now. It is an experiential understanding, an experiential realization that we are aiming for. And experience, as the Buddha said, always converges upon the point of feeling. So when we look for our feelings, they can only happen right here and now. Not in the future, not in the past, not anywhere. Always right here within this body. If we do not contemplate on the level of gut feeling, so to speak, it is not the Dhamma when we understand something or have a realization. We are not coming closer to the Dhamma. Always keep this in mind. Anyway, let us now come to the most important points. First, as beginners, we put our efforts and attention on the wrong things. This is a natural mode of being, and we have to go beyond that. And we usually need the utterance of another to even look into the right places. Womb attention means that we see the conditions or the origin of our experience and not the immediacy. This is what Hillside Hermitage, as an example, explained as peripheral awareness or things like that. Knowing the source or whatever. Many teachers have different names for that. But it all points to the same thing. With this, with the womb, that our experience, our sense experience is. Contemplate this thoroughly on the basis of strong virtue and on the basis of how you feel and crave right now. And then you pretty much have to make a breakthrough to the Dhamma. You first endure lust and aversion, and later endure the neutral feeling, and then a breakthrough to the Dhamma has to be the result. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy what I do, see benefit in it, or have questions, feel free to let us know in the comments, and Saif and I will likely answer those questions in a Q&A video. But until then, I wish you a pleasant day, and goodbye.